Hi, I'm Sam. I just downloaded my first trial version of Keynote to make this presentation, so please, no judgments. I know you're all designers and want to critique my kerning. So I'll start with a little bit about myself because I'm up here and you're down there, and so you have to listen. I grew up in a family of artists, and so I always knew that I wanted to do something in the arts. And it felt like a very viable way of making a living because I saw all of my parents and grandparents make their living in the arts. My great-grandfather was a fine artist and an art director. My grandfather on my dad's side is an art director, and he made all those old movie posters. My dad does documentary films, and my mom does photography, so it's kind of a family business. And so I was always good at drawing. And so in middle school, I signed myself up for life drawing classes at the local art college. And for those that don't know, life drawing classes usually have a nude model. And my mom was very distressed to find out that her 12-year-old was going to nude life drawing classes, but she let it slide. And so eventually I ended up going to that school for college for illustration. It's Art Center in Pasadena. I'm really nervous right now, I'm sorry. This is my first time speaking in front of a group quite this large. So I just thought I would show you, because you seem like technological people, where I work. I just have a Mac Mini hooked up to a big Cintiq, and I watch Netflix all day, and I paint on Photoshop. And I wasn't going to go too much into my process, because the truth is it's always changing and also not that involved. I open Photoshop and I get my brush tool and I paint, pretty much like an artist would paint with acrylic paint or oil paint. So, and I don't have like a ton of brushes. It's pretty much like maybe 5 that I use in rotation. So, and you're probably wondering, where's all the art? It's not for a while. There's a lot of text slides, I'm sorry. But I went to Art Center College of Design. I graduated in 2010, and I have kind of a problem with art schools, but the one thing Art Center really gave to me was it showed me what I did want to do, or what I did end up wanting to do in art, and that was to be a visual development artist. And a visual development artist basically creates the entire world of an animated or game, or animated film or game or feature film. Like it's kind of like playing God. I get to think all of everything up. And so far, just to give you a quick rundown, my bio on the site is since outdated. I worked for Nickelodeon, Sony Pictures Animation, Disney Television, Rovio Animation, Paramount Animation, doing work for animated films. And so I thought I wanted to be a visual development artist, but when I graduated from school in 2010, I found myself unemployed, unhireable, and unworthy. And nobody told me that in an animated film, there's maybe like 10 to 20 people who do the job that I wanted to do. And when you think about that, a major studio has maybe 2 or 3 films going at the same time. It's a very small job market for how many artists there are. And I was sending off portfolios like crazy. I was doing all the traditional things that you would do to get a job, and I was just not getting hired. And I thought I was worthless, and I thought I had been blackballed by the powers that be, and they were like throwing darts at my picture. And it was then that my mom said something to me that has sort of changed the course of my entire life and guided me in my career and also in my personal life, which is sometimes you have to shake up the universe. And what she was saying to me was, why she said it to me was because I was debating moving out of my college apartment closer to the studios to try and get a job through osmosis. And she said, but when she said this to me, it made me realize that I also needed to completely change the way that I thought of myself as an artist and the way that I approached being hired. And it really made me decide that I wanted to be a brand and not an employee, because I had spent so much time trying to figure out what it was that the studios wanted me to be and how to be that. But instead, I decided I wanted to try and figure out how to make the studios want what I already am. Because the best work that I've ever created, I've created when I'm doing things that represent me. And the studios eventually valued that because the work is more true and people can see that a mile away. So I started to try and think of ways to shape myself so that I was already that thing that I wanted to be. And then when a company came along and hired me, I was partnering with them. I wasn't working with them. And the beginning of my journey was on Tumblr. And I have to say, like, I credit Tumblr with pretty much jump-starting my career. I started my blog, and at that time it was like, there wasn't a lot of original content producers on Tumblr. It was a lot of memes. I mean, still a lot of memes, but now there's a lot more artists there. And it really gave me a space where finally I was getting feedback. Because sending portfolios off to the studios, it's like sending your work off into this dark void. And here I was actually interacting with a vibrant community and getting to talk to them and showing them not just like my work, but my process and my thoughts, and really crafting that image that I wanted whoever would hire me to see. And so I started to feel like somebody was actually out there watching. Tumblr featured my blog, and it went from like a pretty respectable following of like 5,000 people to like 100,000 people. And that has really, I mean, that's gotten me, the blog has gotten me more freelance work than anything else that I've done. And just here's sort of some of the work that I've done. I don't know how good it looks on the projector, but this is my personal work. Unfortunately, the stuff that I can show you is about 2 years old due to like non-disclosure agreements, but this is some of my personal work. These are all digital paintings done in Photoshop. They're sort of dark right now. This was for an auction to help Japan tsunami relief. And this year that I spent pretty much unemployed, but on Tumblr and plugging away, that was probably the most productive year of my life, and also the biggest jump in terms of skill for my art. And so to me, it's like, even though I wasn't successful in like standard terms, it was one of the bigger successes of my career was this year. And it ended up leading to a lot of really interesting projects. This is for a Sailor Moon gallery show that I did. Like, for example, this one that I did with Help Inc., which was designing a poster, and the poster, all of the money that doesn't go to making the poster or maintaining the site and stuff goes to a charity of your choice. And like stuff like this is things that I wouldn't have gotten to do if I didn't have that web presence. Soul Pancake did a video with me about being a visual development artist, and a time-lapse video of my work, which I hesitate. I love working with Soul Pancake, but having to draw on command for 6 hours was really difficult, and I ended up doing some stupid things like inverting the reflection on the water of the ship, and of course all the YouTube comments are about that, and so you can look that up and you can heckle me some more. But and then this one I just threw in because that's Oprah in front of my poster that I designed. Oprah. And sometimes you have to do things that aren't necessarily in the realm of what it is you thought you wanted to do coming out of school, but if I hadn't designed that poster for that documentary, then Oprah would never have been almost near me through my work. And definitely using Tumblr opened me up to sharing my work on things like Twitter and Instagram, and I post my sketches on Instagram, and it gives this back and forth that I think has never before happened in the art community, and has really fueled my work and me to keep going. So just kind of I want to tell you some of the things that I learned in that year, which is that as a freelancer in the truest sense, and now, since then I've been employed full-time at a lot of studios, but I kind of have always felt like I've never not been a freelancer, even when I've worked in-house. And I think that philosophy has served me really well, because the truth is those jobs where you stay at a studio for like 10 years, those jobs don't exist anymore. And you guys are kind of ahead of the curve on that, whereas for artists like who are used to working for big animation studios, we're not used to that, or the generation before me wasn't used to it. When I came out of school, the dream was to get a job at Pixar and to stay there for, until I died. And now I've worked for like 5 or 6 different studios just in the last 2 years in-house. And I have to say that I prefer getting to bounce around to different projects. And it's really because I had to put so much effort into marketing myself like a brand, I became a company of one. I saw, that thing, corporations are people, and while I hate that whole idea, it gave me an idea that if a corporation could be a person, then I could be a corporation. And then when I work with a company, I work with them, I don't work for them. I'm partnering with them. And that really freed me from one of the biggest fears that I think we all have as working artists, which is unemployment or walking away from a project. Because a corporation or a company, they have so many resources and they can really network and draw upon those resources. But a person, you feel like you're beholden to that job. But if I'm just partnering with them, I can walk away from them because I have my own standard that I hold myself and my company to, and now it's gone. The talk is over. Okay, we're back. So that was kind of what I learned, that just because you're employed doesn't mean you have to be an employee. And that's something that's really served me well as I move around through these companies. So I just want to show a little bit of the work that I've done for the studios I've worked at. I can only show, unfortunately, Nickelodeon and Sony. So I got into the Nickelodeon Artists Fellowship, and that was really great because I got to work on SpongeBob and Monsters vs. Aliens. So this is some of the work I did for SpongeBob. SpongeBob was awesome because they're one of the only shows that paints things by hand, like the backgrounds they paint all with acrylic paint. So it was a really excellent opportunity for me. These are some character designs for SpongeBob. Lots of fun. And then for Monsters vs. Aliens, this is a giant alien toilet that I designed. And I tested it and it works fine. Because I was a plumber previously, apparently. And then I did, from Nickelodeon, I moved to Sony, and I worked on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs too. And one of the things that I did on Cloudy was I painted character textures. So these were designed by Craig Kelman and Andre Medina, and then I painted the textures on top of them. As you can probably tell, the whole movie was me being really hungry all the time because I was just painting food all day. The other cool thing I got to do is this magazine cover. We did tons of these. Craig Kelman designed this, and I painted it, and I got to write the headlines, and some props, maps, and that sort of thing. Like, pretty much my job is creating anything and everything that you see on screen. A visual development artist thought it up. I don't do the animation. I don't make things move. I'm the person who kind of writes the blueprints for what gets made into CG. But my work is 2D. It's a flat painting. These are some props designed by Aaron Spurgeon. And unfortunately, you can't really see, but this is my UI I did all of the little graphics on the screens and stuff. This is an environment that I painted and designed by Aaron Spurgeon, but I painted it up and designed some of the graphics. There's Barry doing his little DDR, Dance Dance Revolution. Okay, so this was by far my favorite thing to do on the show, which is create color script, or color keys, and color and lighting keys. For every movie, there's a color script, which is kind of the macro vision of the color and lighting through the movie. And then for each scene within that is represented in the color script, there's a bunch of color and lighting keys. And artists will go through and light the entire movie. In an animated feature film, nothing is left to chance. There's too much money involved. So I got to go through and decide what kind of colors what kind of colors and mood and lighting would go through each scene. And keeping in mind both realistic and also like storytelling. And when I was watching G-Monk's talk about his mood boards, I create those as well for each like scene. I assemble all of my reference. I have real life lighting reference, I have story reference, I have color reference of like the kind of mood and setting that I want to pull from. And so there's a ton of background research and that goes into these scenes. As a close-up of one of my favorite ones from the film. More color and lighting keys. This one was designed by Aaron Spurgeon, painted it. Unfortunately, I think they're a little dark, but so I also just wanted to sort of wrap up or talk about a little bit the idea of inspiration. And I heard this quote a long time ago by Picasso. It says, "Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working." And I always loved it, and I always thought it was awesome. But as I move forward in my career, I take issue with it a lot, actually. I take issue with the idea of inspiration as artists and as designers. When people ask us, where do we get our ideas from? And I think that the problem I have with inspiration is that it's really nebulous. It sounds like it comes from outside of you. And the truth is, the work that you create is the result of more work. The work that you've done in your life, living your life. The observations you've made, the people you've met, the adventures that you've had. I really believe that inspiration sells it short. And one of the problems that I think working artists have these days is that people who are not artists don't know how to value our work. They don't know how to pay you for it because they don't understand how you came to it. They think that it's fun for you, so they don't think that they should have to pay you for it. So to call something inspired, to me, it makes it seem like magic, and I want to demystify the idea of art. So, because I think that the life you lead is what informs the art that you make. And I think if we presented it as, I'm constantly researching, and my art is the result of that, instead of, I had this moment after sleeping, and I thought of this idea, then it becomes more of a commodity. And as we move forward, and I think as artists as a group become entirely freelance, that's going to be the most valuable thing, is being able to tell people, I do work for a living, I sell a commodity. And it should be valued and fairly compensated. So here's like some of the examples of that. I went to Israel when I was in college, and like these are like some of the comic book pages that came from that, but all of the things that you would think are inspiration are actually the result of sketching and going outside and research and looking at things and talking to people and reading. So to me, I think the new manifesto should be, there's only the work, inspiration is dead. Because I think that it's an outdated concept. We should value our work and think of it as work and know that what we're creating has value in the world. And it's not for fun all the time. I mean, it is for fun, we love it, but when we're creating things that need to have a real size and shape and proper value in the world, then it should be seen for what it is, which is a whole lot of work. And that went a lot faster than I thought, but thank you so much for having me, and I hope you have questions.
Thanks, Sam. Question right here.
You mentioned that your work on SpongeBob, they did their backgrounds in acrylic paint.
Yes.
And so you did acrylic painting?
Yes.
So my question is, what percentage of what you've shown today was paint and what percentage was digital?
Only the SpongeBob work was paint, because it's just not fast enough. In feature film especially, I have to repaint a painting of the same thing probably like 7 times on average. I mean, before it gets approved, and especially in animated films, they are writing the script until maybe a couple months before the movie is released. So we are constantly going back and reworking things and re-editing things. And I think they do that with animation because they can, honestly. Just, there's no actors to wrangle back into the room. I mean, a lot of times they already have the set dialogue, but they can rework a scene visually as long as they can pay for it. So it doesn't make any sense to have it traditionally painted anymore. On Cloudy, though, I will say, for most of those paintings, we used actual textures of like watercolor paint that we scanned into the computer, and that figures pretty prominently in my work. I will scan, like for example, I'll scan in like flat textures, and you can see it in the Soul Pancake video too, and I'll work it back into the paintings so that it has this like quality, I suppose, of like gouache or acrylic paint, just because that's what I like. This one especially, tons of, you can't really see it, but tons of paper textures, and a lot of paper textures. So all of this is on my website if you want to see a better quality.
Hi, great talk.
Thank you.
Love your stuff. Just curious, what's for you in the future? Are you going to keep being a creative gun hired around to different studios, or do you want to have your own studio? What's the vision?
That's definitely a good question that I'm trying to figure out too. I mean, I definitely have seen, as I've been working and doing freelance and working for studios, that my own work has fallen by the wayside a little bit, which is something I regret. I think professionally though, what I'm really interested in is the fact that in animation, we have been telling the same story over and over again for so long. I don't watch animated movies. I don't like them particularly. I think they're kind of boring. And one of the reasons for that is because the stories that the big studios are telling are the one perspective of, I mean, it's getting better. Like when I look around, I do see a lot more women, but it's pretty much like just like, you know, white men telling stories about young girls, princesses. And that's been really frustrating for me in my career, and I feel like there's a really lack of diversity of storytellers in animation. And so I guess my big dream, if you were to ask me, is like having a studio that is willing to embrace the diverse stories, the stories that come from real backgrounds, from real people, and the only way you can get that is to have people working at your studio who have a say in the way the movie ends up, that are from diverse backgrounds. So I think that would be something that I'm always thinking about. How can I tell a different story, and whether that's on my own or with an independent studio, or maybe shaking up the universe at a big studio, I don't know. But I think my future is trying to figure out how to do the medium that I love, which is cartoons, but cartoons that actually resonate and tell an interesting story for me. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm surprised you didn't work on Brave, first of all. But
I just modeled for it.
I think it's really interesting, the process. I always figured this stuff was hand painted. So are you like doing stuff in Photoshop with like a stylus pen?
Pretty much, I'm sitting in front of a Cintiq. At work, we have the 22 ones. I have the 24 at home, and you just paint on the screen as if it's a canvas. And I use only Photoshop. I don't like Illustrator. I don't understand the vector thing. But I do use the pen tool in Photoshop. I have since branched out. But pretty much, it's just like, you know, I use maybe 5 tools, but like it's basically painting. And that's kind of a personal choice of mine. I've seen a lot of artists, they work, you know, in all different ways, but for me, like, I feel most comfortable when I'm working with it like it's a real painting. And to me, that's what gives it that human touch that I think a lot of CG art, as the movie goes forward into 3D, I feel like it all gets sort of melded together into this very homogeneous plastic look. So if I can put as much of like the personal touch and the human touch into the VizDev art in the beginning, I hope that that way you can only hope that it comes through. And I think Cloudy was especially successful with that. The guys at Sony were amazing, and they created a whole new way of doing the backgrounds so that our textures really came through. So that was, and I have to shout out really briefly to Justin Thompson and Dave Bleich, who you should look up because they're amazing artists, and they were my production designer and art director on Cloudy, and they're pretty much responsible for like the look that I've carried forward of that that textural look made from a digital medium. So.
How does your family react to like digital painting, or your dad?
I think they're all very surprised at how much money you can make in animation. And no, I mean, definitely, my dad my dad loves technology, but I think my grandfather is always mourning the loss of like traditional paint. But if you know how to paint traditionally, then you're only a better digital painter. So it all works out.
First, you're awesome, like
Thank you.
incredibly awesome. It makes me excited to see your work and things I love. But do you have a desire to tell your own story, do a book of your own, a graphic novel, a kid's book or anything? Is any of that in kind of your future? Because I would buy the shit out of that.
Sold one copy already. No, I would love to do something like that, honestly. And the truth is, and this is the balance part that I haven't exactly found yet, is I've been so busy with the work that I've gotten from the studios that I have not even had a moment to think about what it is that I want to do for myself. And so I definitely would love to do a graphic novel or a kid's book or something like that. But I think the other thing is, and this is kind of part of like why I love Tumblr, is that I'm going to share with you an insecurity of mine. And I think that that's what has made the blog particularly successful, is because I am sharing a ton of insecurities, is that I don't know what story I want to tell yet. And there's a lot of pressure for your first story because you feel like it should be your like opus, you know? So that's the other thing, is I got to get over myself a little bit. So.
It's a follow-up question on that. Do you actually sell some of your art somewhere on the web?
Yes. I do.
You do?
I have a Society 6 page. I don't know how much money you actually net from that. I have a feeling maybe it just goes into the void of PayPal. But I don't know how to get it into the money. I don't know. Despite working on the computer all day, I'm very technologically illiterate. So I have a Society 6 page, and it has some of my work on it. I wish they would let you edit how your stuff looks on the iPad and iPod cases, but yeah, so you can go to my website, samkallis.com, SAMKALLIS.com, and there's links to all of that stuff.
Thanks for sharing. Could you go to the slide with the little ship, the tiny ship?
The little, oh, where is it?
Yes,
Oh.
now there it is. I have that hanging right over my workstation at home. No, I'm interested because you've obviously done a lot of like you do your own personal stuff, and then you work in with these big studios and in this collaborative effort. Like, can you put some words on like what is most rewarding to you? Like, it's not, yeah, it's these two very different settings, I guess, where you work with a big team and the big bosses, and you work for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely working for myself is a lot harder because I am much harder on myself than my boss, but also because I am a person who feeds off creative energy, and I love problem solving. And if someone poses a problem to me, I can solve that problem. But sometimes when I'm working on my own, I don't even know what the problem is that I'm supposed to solve. So working in a studio is a lot of fun for me, actually. I really like that. And definitely I think that it only makes the work that I do for myself better because of what I learned from all the people I work with there. One of the things that I learned in my year of unemployment / freelance, well, and that's the other thing that two things that I learned. One is always look like you're busy when you're unemployed, because then that's the only way to get employed. But the other thing that I learned is I don't work very well by myself. Actually, it's kind of like this speech. I ran through that thing really fast, but I love this part. I love the Q&A. And so for me, that back and forth is what I'm better at. And I'm really working hard at trying to get better at the part that is just me. But I think also that I really love the collaboration. I love telling stories with a bunch of people and figuring out the best solutions. So.
Okay, the reason I asked is because that to me is working alone. That's kind of why I have it.
Oh, that's what the ship is
Yeah.
for you? I can see that for sure. I was definitely alone in Starbucks when I painted it, so.
Thanks for sharing that.
I love like all the colors and everything in your work.
Thank you.
You talked a little bit about how, you know, like your work is not just like a single moment, but it's about research and inspiration. And I see some, you know, kind of parody between like Mary Blair and like old, like kind of older retro artists
Definitely.
like that. Where do you find your inspiration? Are there any artists that you're really inspired by?
Well, definitely Mary Blair. She's a pretty big one. I would say that my biggest inspiration are the people that I work with directly, seeing the way that they problem solve. I think more than looking at art that is in my particular field, like animated art of books, I buy them all, but the truth is the problem solving that happens in art that's completely separate from film and television is much more useful to me. Architecture, abstract art, I mean, looking at how, because I work on a 2D plane that I've manipulated you into thinking is three-dimensional through perspective. But when I pull back and I look at it as just a flat plane, if it still works, then I feel like I know it's a good design. And that is something that you learn from abstract art. So I think for me also the big thing is going outside and experiencing life and not being in front of a computer all day. So I'd say that's like my biggest source of inspiration. I mean, all of the work that I do comes from, like, this is kind of why I don't like inspiration, because it comes from inside of me, whereas inspiration sounds like it comes from outside of me. I have internalized every experience and every image I've ever looked at, and I've put it in a library of myself, as Sherlock would say, a mind palace. And I go through and I pull out what I need. So it's a very deliberate process for me. And definitely, I would say, when I'm looking for inspiration, I really, and this is something I learned working in the studio, because when you're on the outside looking in, you're just looking at the art of books and you're saying, how can I do what they did? Is that you have to look outside of your medium. You have to look at what people are doing that doesn't look like what you do, or it doesn't even have anything to do with what you do, because that's the only way that it's going to bring something new to the table. Otherwise, you're just rehashing what's been done a million times. So. I could go all day.
Hey, I'm all the way back here. So when you get hired for your work, do you find that people hire you for like your personal style and to create work like that? Or do you find that a studio will like already have an idea in mind and then you have to kind of like conform to what they want?
I think a little of both. When you are working on an animated film in particular, they try and create the style from scratch. They try and make it look different than anything that's ever been done before. And as a viz dev artist, one of your jobs is to help do that, to help create a new style. So I would say that I think I get hired most for not necessarily what my art looks like, but the sensibilities behind it. How do I handle color? How do I approach a problem? That sort of thing. I would say there are a lot of studios that say, we need someone to draw a movie about cars, and this person has a ton of cars in their portfolio. And that is sort of the short-sighted studio to me, or the short-sighted recruiter. The best people I've ever worked for have said, we hired you because we saw the way you think, and we think that the way you think can problem solve this movie for us. And that was cloudy for me. They hired me for the way I thought, and it was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. That's kind of what I look for in a project too. And now it's, people know me, they know the way I work, and they call me for that. So, and I think a lot of times though, when someone calls you up and says, I saw your work and I want you to do this for me, what you did for them, I'm not that interested, because I don't want to do that again. And also a lot of times they have a misconception of what it is that they want. So Or they'll ask you to say, we hired you and we want you to work in a completely different style. So it kind of goes all over the gamut. But the best is when they hire you for the way you think, not the way your work looks.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Sam.
Thank you.